go. Um, so we are so excited to welcome Sarah Duran. And Sarah, can you share your story? They had your listening tour. That was one of their exercises, but we'd love to hear about your background and context.
Sure, happy to. Hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here. When Maria was telling me about the program, I was like, how lucky are these folks that they get a program like this when I think a lot of freelancers just sort of stumble through it and figure it out on their own. So I'm really excited to be here. I wish that more universities were doing things like this. So I'm Sarah Duran. I am a fractional COO. So I work both as an embedded COO inside of solo and micro businesses where I help founders get the business out of their head and sort of into systems that can hold it. And then I also run a working group for freelancers and consultants where I apply that COO lens in a group setting. And very much a lot of strategy, a lot of offer refinement, a lot of troubleshooting, client conversations, all that kind of stuff. And the way that I got here is I started my career as a teacher, actually. I was a third grade teacher right out of college. And through the course of the rest of my career after that, I worked through for a bunch of education nonprofits. So my background is in like pre-K 12 education. Um, when I was, good grief, how old was I? I think I was in my late 20s and I got sort of like my dream job where I had like checked all the boxes for myself. I was like, great, I've got the money, I've got the benefits. I was working fully remote at that time, which was rare for back then. And I still was like, something is missing, something isn't working here, and decided to quit my job. In the meantime, I picked up some contract work and did a bunch of other things. I got my real estate license. I was just kind of like, what am I going to do next? And lo and behold, that was the universe telling me that I was supposed to run my own business because the contract work seemed to be working. And here, this is actually about 12 years since then. Here I am, after a few other like testing a few other things out in the interim. I incorporated my company about 10 years ago. And so I've been doing that ever since. And I will just say that, like, I call myself a fractional COO now. That is definitely not how I started. I've gone through all of the different things that someone with my skill set can do. I've called myself a project manager, an operations consultant, program manager. And so it is very much an ongoing, iterative, all over the place journey to figure out sort of what your solopreneur business is going to be. And it will constantly evolve as you evolve as a human, moving forward as well. So that's a little bit about me and how I got here. Um, what else is helpful, Maria? I like what you talked about. I'm happy to walk through a little bit of like the listening tour stuff, but I know y'all already like have read the thing and like probably done a little bit of it. So you tell me where's the most helpful place to go from here.
Okay, great. Yeah, such a great background, and it's a good reminder too, because we can look at people like you who, from the outside, it looks polished, right? Because you've been doing it for a while. You've got yourself dialed in. It's still shifting, but it's dialed, and and it can be easy to compare ourselves to that, but just know that everyone starts out, and you're kind of figuring yourself out and what to name yourself and where you fit in. Um, I would say we did a lot of different things. The listening tour, well, I'm curious because Sarah can talk about so many things. I mean, she has so much content. So I would love to open it up and hear what we talked about a lot of different things. We covered a lot of ground. The client profile that you did, researching, finding where your audience is, and doing kind of listening online, finding the communities and listening for what the unmet needs were, the pain points were. Then you reached out to some people and did some listening tours directly with potential either past clients that you've had or you know people that could be potential clients. What comes to mind for you? What did you find um, What did you find challenging? Let's start there. Or what questions do you have in any of the things that you did this module? And you can put questions in chat too. I know it's a larger group than we normally have.
Can I start with the question?
Yeah, please.
Please let me know if my mic is doing okay. I found one of the hardest part, there are a couple of hard part about the listening tour. Number one is finding cool audiences. I definitely don't want to approach people I know could potentially become my audience and approach them like a headless chicken. So that kind of eliminates a lot of people for me. So I approached my friend and I found out during the whole conversation, I kind of have to coach them throughout the whole thing. And I don't know if that influenced them or not because why open them up about the specific question I'm having, they kind of, I think it kind of caught them off guard. It took me a while to get them to actually think about it. But I did realize the more I ask them more questions, I realize I see in their industry, the more trust they begin to have in my observation skill. They kind of know I already did my research. So that was a reassuring part about, yes, doing research beforehand is definitely very important. But I do want to know how's other people's listening tour. Did they face the same problem where they kind of have to kind of coach their audience to open up?
Yeah. So the first listening tour I did, it was with somebody who I'm working with now, and he hired me freelance as a studio. So I was trying to like understand his experience and also kind of understand the challenges, the unmet needs, like everything that was kind of on the list of topics. And what I was learning as I was listening was that the experience and everything that he was talking about wasn't exactly answering my questions. So I kind of had a lot of trouble like trying to reframe questions or try and pick apart pieces of his history that I could try and like pull from. But that was like the hardest part of that conversation was, okay, I don't think this is super related, but I'm gonna try anyway.
Sarah, what are your thoughts on yeah, those points?
Yeah, so it is hard when you don't have clients yet to find the right people to talk to. The perfect people to talk to in a listening tour are people who have, well, there's like three tiers. The first tier, the best people to talk to is someone who has paid you to do something in the last year. And not all of us have that, right? But that is like that's the gold standard is you want to talk to someone who has like actually gotten out their wallet, their credit card, whatever it is, and paid you to do something. Those are going to be your best people to talk to. A tier down from that is people within your ideal client profile or market. And that is just like everything else in freelancing, like that is a learning experience, that is a moving target. Like I can't tell you how many times over the last 10 years I have refined and re-refined and re-refined my ideal client or pivoted or shifted. It's easy for me to like say like make sure it's your ideal client, but like if you haven't had a lot of client experience, it's really hard to know that. And even if you have, there's still like a lot of distilling down you have to do to figure that out. So that's just to say those are like the first two tiers. But I think like practicing these kinds of conversations with anyone is super helpful because you're getting to exactly what you were saying, Jing. Hopefully, I'm saying your name right. That it is a skill to be able like having asking someone to have that kind of conversation with you and facilitating a conversation like that is a skill. It is scary, it is not comfortable, so getting sort of the practice of doing that even if it is with like people who have nothing to do with your ideal clientele, like bravo, do that, well done. But the reason why those first two tiers are so important is that it is really easy to have a conversation with someone that is not, either not your ideal client or someone who is your ideal client but is not willing to actually pay you to do anything, and they are going to give you the wrong information. So you could design, and trust me, I've gone through this so many times in my own business where it's like I have like been doing like proof of concept, like, oh, I'm going to design and launch this new thing. And so I'm going to like do a bunch of conversations with the people who I think are the people who would buy this thing. And those people will inevitably, not all of them, but a lot of them will inevitably be giving you the wrong information or like false positives. And you end up designing something for someone who is not your ideal client. And then when you go out and start selling, trying to sell it to your ideal client, they're like, that's not at all what I wanted. So it's really like, again, there's like that top tier, people who have already paid you to do something. The tier under that is people who you think are your ideal client, which you'll find out a lot about your ideal client in having these conversations. But you can just get a lot of noise. Like an example for me is I actually was doing some business coaching sessions at a co-working space here, actually in Boulder. And someone who runs a business, they just started a product business. They make this like health supplement. And they were like, we think you're our ideal client. Like you're like I don't know, I'm like approaching middle-aged woman. And like this seems like the right product for you. But like and I was giving them like a bunch of feedback. When we started digging down into it, they're like, oh, like we're actually aiming for people who are thinking this way, not necessarily the way you're thinking. And my advice to them was like, forget everything I just told you. Because everything I just told you is just noise. Like there's a lot of, it's really easy to get a lot of noise in these conversations where it's like people are like telling you all these things that they want or that they think they want. So again, gold standard, people who have paid you. Second tier down, people who are your ideal client.
That's great. Sarah, how do you identify noise? How does one, especially early on, identify noise?
I don't know that you can identify early on until you've like tested it. So like when you're
Mhm.
having the conversation, you probably won't know that it's noise until you've actually like tested it in the market. So early on, I would say like just like my advice to anyone who's like, I want to start a business, I'm like, figure out like the best gist of what you want to do and the problems you're going to solve, and then go out and have as many conversations as you can. Like literally think of every single person that you know and just have a conversation with them, because what that will give you sort of the practice, B, the information you need to start refining your thinking around like as you're talking to these people, you're like, well, the problem, and I hear that maybe coming up here a little bit, is like what that person is saying isn't really connected to what I want to do, or something about this isn't like, maybe that's not like the type of person or business I want to be working with. So all of those conversations are valuable. And if you're doing that ideal client work that I saw like in the curriculum that you guys had for this module, that's going to get you like light years ahead of just like, you know, throwing spaghetti at the wall and talking to anyone you can. Um, but the way you figure out if it's noise is by testing it. And you just learn over time, like things that I would sell, let's say 2 years ago, now I look at those sales pages and I'm like, I don't, who was I talking to? But like 2 years ago, I thought that was great. I was like, I've done all the work. This is perfect. Everyone wants this thing. So really, it is like a matter of trial and error. But all that ideal client work that you do on the front end will only help you to get closer to that faster.
Mhm. And when you say testing it, like what is kind of the fastest way to test it? Like are you testing sales messages? Or are you testing like are you building content and products?
I think it depends on your business model. So, like, I sort of have two sides of my business. I have like a one-on-one services side of my business, which is like probably what a lot of you have are thinking about for your business. And then I have a more it's not a product, but like my group program is more of a B2C type of sales model. Like the people who are in my group are B's, but they're like lowercase b's, and it's just like a different, fundamentally different like sales strategy. So when I think of service-based, like one-on-one service-based businesses, I am always cautioning people about thinking in funnels, lead magnets, like that kind of stuff. I find that the best way that you find clients for a one-on-one service-based business is like old school individual networking. Like build relationships with real humans, figure out the humans that you want to work with, figure out where they hang out, whether that's like online or in person, figure out who they trust, figure out who they go to for information. And some of that applies on the other side of my business. So you can see that I do that. Like I run workshops for Freelancers Union, right? So I know that when I come there, people are going to those workshops because they trust Freelancers Union and they are going there for information about their business. They're going there because they have a need for the information that I am giving them. So that's already filtered out people who are like not motivated enough to solve their problem. That's one filter that's already happened. Um, and so that's like a good example of like if you can find the types of people who are the people, I call them like nodes. So it's like the people who serve the same people that you want to be serving, but do something different than you. Or the people that those people go to for advice, or the people that those people go to for referrals. A good example that's like not related to our field, but if you think about like realtors, a lot of realtors know like a lot of great contractors, right? Like they know the right plumber, they know the right like roofer, they know the right electrician. And so if I were running like a contracting business, I would want to like make friends with a bunch of realtors, right? Like those are the people that people every time I need a recommendation for someone to work on my house, I text my realtor and I'm like, "Do you know anyone that does this?" So that's like an example of thinking, doing that ideal client work, thinking about the people you want to help, and then think about like where do they hang out? Where are the people, who are the people they go to for advice? And then it's really just testing it out through conversations. So like when you could hear it when I introduce myself, telling you what I do. The version of what I do for the people I work one-on-one with is different than the version of what I do for the people I work in a group with. And the line that I used for my COO work, I work with founders to get the business out of their head and into systems that can hold it. I built that because I did a listening tour with a bunch of people who I know who are my ideal clients or people I've already worked with and had them describe what I do and the problem that I solve. And now I can say that back to people. So you're constantly just being able to like test it and see what resonates. And with one-on-one service businesses, I find that that is most helpful when you're having like one-on-one conversations with real humans.
Mm, that's great. What's your message? How does it vary how do you shift it for the group work?
For the group work, and I just did a listening tour for my group work too. So I've been iterating on that a lot over time. Right now with my group work, I talk about freelancers and consultants who have built something real or something organically, as a lot of us do. It just kind of like happens. And now you need to run it on purpose. So you sort of need to build the structure behind the business that you accidentally built.
Great. Good stuff. All right. What are some other questions? Sarah is a trove of knowledge. So you can even ask her, feel free to ask any questions, even if it's not in this module. Like that's fine as well.
I think I have a really big picture question for Sarah. It's like my ultimate problem right now, or maybe like my lifelong career problem. Um, right now, a lot of my freelance work comes from kind of like low-hanging fruit projects that happen to find me. But I have all the background, education, experience as any great, maybe a senior designer or creative director that works for Pentagram, for example. And those are all the kinds of projects that I want to be going after in my repositioning my freelance business as a legitimate creative services, strategy and design services. Um, so that's my, purpose in doing this Catalyst studio. I want to move forward with those kinds of larger, more meaningful brand work that often goes to those bigger companies like Pentagram. I say Pentagram because when I've worked in-house at museums, a couple of museums. It's always Pentagram that they hire. And I'm always the one to come in and go, okay, that's the work they did. Now I'm going to make it actually usable for you. um,
Yeah, great question. So how to kind of not take the low hanging fruit, but really be more strategic and go after the bigger projects.
yeah,
Yeah, is the question like how to get in with those types of people?
I guess so. I mean, I'm thought of as the one that comes in to do the like, the cleanup. Like, okay, take what Pentagram gave us, expand on it, clean it up, make it usable. We couldn't afford anybody but their intern, so
Okay.
and even just projects, I want to be thought of as the one that's got in my friends and network that comes with me. Just kind of struggling with, how do I make myself be as seen as legitimate and talented and strategic as a firm like that? It's a pretty broad question.
No, it's a great question. So I'm so sorry. My husband just texted me. He needs me to like check him in to pick up our groceries real quick. Give me like
That's
just one
uh,
second. I
yeah,
have a question for you.
I
Um,
and I can jump in for a quick sec because my first thought, Elizabeth, is changing your name, and I don't know if you already have this or not, to a studio. It's amazing. As soon as you put studio at the end of your name or whatever it reframes and it feels a lot bigger for people. I don't know if anyone's experienced that, or Sarah, if you have experienced like once you add studio to the name,
That's
it
funny
yeah.
because one of my current clients actually calls me, it's not my name, but he calls me EBR Studios.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely positioning things there around like what you call yourself. Like I just shifted to calling myself a fractional COO over the last like 3 years. And that signals something very different about the type of work I do and the people that I work with. Um, so I think there's definitely something there. But it also sounds like you have like the perfect listening tour opportunity. Like if you're working with people, like if Pentagram is your like competitor, so like knowing like that's who I would be in competition with if I'm working at this level, and you already have clients who you're working with who have worked with them, that is like you have like perfect listening to her opportunity. What I would do is, and again, this can be like scary asking our clients to have these conversations, but like it can't hurt to ask. I would walk them back in that journey to like, how did you decide to go with Pentagram? What were the problem you were dealing with? What were the pain points? What were the other solutions? Like some of the other stuff in the listening to her script, but literally walk them back to that moment of like, how did you decide to go that route versus other routes? Because that will give you so much information. Again, I wonder if a lot of that is just like reputations or like personal relationships where like someone knew someone that knew someone and that's how it happened because that is often how these things happen. Um, all of the biggest one-on-one contracts I've ever gotten, like those people didn't even know I had a website. Like it literally is just like I knew someone that knew me, saw me do work with someone else, and the way relationships happen. So I would really like, I think you have like a really concrete way to mine your ideal clients for, because it sounds like you're already working with your ideal clients, but you want to be at a different level. And I would just like walk them back and see what they say about the decision-making process that got them to hire Pentagram.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We've got a few questions in the chat, so I'd love to read them.
sure.
So from Lucy, she found during the listening tour is that the potential clients that she reached out to turned out to have needs that didn't actually match her skills, and they
Mm.
ended up being not potential clients as our conversation went deeper. So, except for those who don't reply, I sometimes find the pool of connections shrinking with every step when I talk to people. and then someone
Mhm.
else had the same situation. So yeah, curious what your thoughts are on that, Sarah.
I mean, I think A, that tells you something about your ideal client. So you've like definitely learned something there. Because like I said, every one of these conversations is going to tell us about our ideal clients. When I did my COO one, that's like a much smaller pool that I of people that I had to talk to than when I'm doing a listening tour for my group program. And so I was talking to a lot of people, same as you, where I was like, I think this is my ideal client. They run like a pretty high ticket service-based business. They've been doing it for a long time. And I had similar conversations where like as I dug deeper, I was like, oh, this probably isn't my ideal client. So A, I think that gives you a lot of information about who your ideal client is. And the thing about this is like it depends on where you're sourcing these conversations from, like what kind of pool you're starting with, because I that will have a lot to say about the quality of those conversations that you have. And again, it's not like all of us have incredibly deep networks that we can go to for these things. So doing any type of listening conversation is not a waste of time. It is going to give you information, is going to help you practice this skill set. Even if that person turns out not to be your ideal client, if you did a good job of it, they now understand what you do and can think about referring you to other people. So all networking is good networking. Um, but I think that this also might signal that it might be like you need to think about going to a different pool to start pulling these people from. But like this is kind of the thing with like the cold conversations is it's always like really hard. The other thing that I would say too is at the end of every conversation, I always ask, who else should I be talking to? So even if this person turned out not to be your ideal client, they might, now that they've had a conversation with you and they know you're not just like some person trying to like randomly sell them stuff, like you want to have a genuine conversation with them, they may actually have people in mind that might be a better fit for you to talk to. So I would always recommend ending every single conversation with that question as well.
That's great. That brings me to a question for you is like, and some people kind of struggled with this, and it's understandable where they're kind of proposing a solution
Mhm.
before fully listening. So curious how what you have to say on that and how to stay in that. And then also when do you, after a listening tour, is there a time where you kind of share what you do? Like how do you do that in an elegant way?
Yeah, it's so the two of the books that I referenced in how I built my listening tour script are important. One of them is called The Mom Test. I would highly recommend reading it. It is about how to get feedback that actually matters, like we were talking about. The reason it's called the mom test is because anyone could show something to their mom and they're going to be like, honey, that's amazing. Like, I love that. And they're like, that's not the kind of feedback that you want. You do not want to be showing something to someone who's like, that looks great. And they're never going to pay for it. So that's a book that I would highly recommend reading. And the other one is called I can't remember which, I can't remember which book I referenced, but it's about the jobs to be done theory. So like, what is the job that your service is actually doing for someone? And so I would really, and I think I say this at the top of the script, stay away from telling them about your product, your service, anything at the beginning. Really, this conversation is all about asking them questions. If there's someone who has paid you to do something before, they will inevitably start talking about your stuff, how it solved their problem, how it made them feel, how it was different. So they will inevitably start going there if they are a past customer of yours. If they're not, then you really, and it's hard, you really have to stay focused on this is about getting information about them. This is not about pitching yourself. If you get to the end, oftentimes the beauty of a listening to our conversation, if you're the more skilled that you get at it, is as you are asking them questions about themselves, you're helping them become problem aware. And so, a really skilled person in a conversation like this, and this applies also to discovery conversation. So, if you're in like an initial like consultation conversation with a potential client, this is the same rule. Like it should always be questions. You should never be entering that conversation being like, here's what I can do for you. Here's what I do. You always want to start with like, what are the problems you're dealing with? What else have you tried to solve them? What are your goals? What would look different in your business or your organization if you solved this problem? What would it look like if this thing that you want to have done was really successful? You should always be going into those conversations with questions, not statements about what you do, because what you're doing there is you're really helping them become problem aware. The more problem aware they become, the more likely they're going to be like, oh my God, I have a problem. Especially in these listening to our conversations, they're not coming to the table a lot of the time knowing that they have a problem, right? That's not the goal of the conversation. But by the end of some of these, you will get someone to a point where they're like, oh, like now that we've like really had this conversation, I think there's something I really need to fix. Can you help me do that? So I try really hard, and I'm not perfect at this either. There have definitely been instances where I at the end am like, I gotta just say that if you hired me to do this thing, like it would really change the game for you. But I would highly recommend not leading with that. It builds rapport in a completely different way. Um, people are used to being sold to so much that when you come into a conversation like this and all you are doing is asking questions and genuinely listening, it feels completely different than anything else they've experienced.
That's great. And I love the problem awareness. Someone was saying in Slack, I can't remember who it was, but they were kind of discovering, was it Jing or Weilin? Yeah, Jing, do you want to talk about this? Like where they were kind of discovering the problem.
Yeah, I actually didn't go into my conversation with my friend. He's a game developer. I'm trying to establish a thing where I can help indie game designer who doesn't really think about marketing to better help them promote their game on Steam. And I told them this is the kind of business I'm thinking about. And I asked them, have you ever thought about marketing? And as they talk, and I could see the anxiety begin building on their face. They're like, oh shit, you're right. I never thought about this. And every time marketing always caught me off guard. And an hour later, they're like, Jing, I just gotta shoot it. Do you have time? Would you be willing to do this? I'm like, so I was like, oh shit, did I do this wrong? Because I'm not supposed to promote my thing, but yeah.
No, that's perfect. Like I said, if you get to the end in one of those and they ask you, do it. Like you're not breaking any rules there. It's just not the thing that I would lead with.
Mhm.
So that's like the perfect example of it. Like you helped that person become problem aware where they didn't even like know that that was a problem. But the opposite is like if you come in, even if you're not pitching yourself, if you're coming in being like, "Oh, I find that a lot of like if you were like, I find that a lot of designers are shit at marketing, like that's also not going to go well, right? Like you have to have them get to that conclusion on their own. And that is a skill of like really asking them the right questions to help them uncover that. Because the other thing I often find, I call it like the tip of the iceberg problem. So people will know like their pain point is like the tip of the iceberg. And they're like, okay, for a lot of people I work with, let's say it's like capacity. They're like, I'm working all the time. Like that's my problem. My problem is that I'm working all the time. And I'm like, okay, let's like dig underneath that a little bit. Like, what does it look like? What does your clientele look like? And they're like, well, I sort of work for, like 15 different kinds of people. And I'm like, okay, great. What do your offers look like? And they're like, I don't have offers. Like I do, whatever people need me to do. And I'm like, great. So your problem isn't that you're working all the time. Your problem is that you're doing 15 different things for 15 different kinds of people without any replicable systems. Like that is your actual problem. But they would never have gotten to that if I hadn't been able to ask them the right questions to get down there.
That's great. Well, that brings me to one of the other topics was unmet needs and like how you uncover that. Because often you've talked about this, Sarah, and we've talked, and people have discovered this for themselves that they think they have one problem, but really they have a deeper problem
Mhm.
And Brennan, I feel like your response this time, you really uncovered, got a whole web of problems to solve for your client Juan. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I just spotted an opportunity where there was a underserved market regionally where a cafe, they weren't serving any plant-based options. And so I initially went in there under the guise of doing a consultative menu review with the hopes of extending that into a brand diagnostic, basically taking them down my service funnel, which is first a brand diagnostic, then designing and building a solution or a system, and then a strategic oversight program that's subscription based for the foreseeable future. But in the conversation, despite discussing some of the food business that he was doing in the cafe, he made it very clear that it's maybe 10% or even less of his focus right now, and what he's focusing on is actually selling pounds of coffee, specifically around 300 pounds per week. And so, in just him shifting, seeing what his prioritized business goals were, at least from his perspective, not from an analyzed, say brand attribute, user definition perspective, but from what he's seeing inside the shop, it just showed me that there was other angles that I was still able to go after and, provide some value towards. And it just opened up other conversations in addition to the one I had in mind. So I think the questions, what I did, I mixed some of my questions in with some of the questions from the forum, Sarah, and I felt like I was able to adapt it a bit. But in just speaking with somebody and asking them, this series of questions, it almost gets them into a therapeutic mode. And, they'll just start talking and talking. If you just let them talk, eventually you're going to see which nuggets you got to pick out and really mold into opportunity. So yeah, thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's so, I mean, like nothing I make is ever supposed to be like the template. So like that's why it's a Google Doc. I'm glad that you adapted it because it should definitely be adapted. And it will be adapted like every single time you use it because I even like my own script, like I adapt it every single time that I use it. I don't ever have the same conversation twice with someone. But that's like so powerful because it is exactly what I was saying before. Like people are used to an activity that I'll often have people do before I do a workshop around like client conversations is like think of think of a time when you engaged with a service professional where you felt seen and heard and knew that they were going to solve your problem. And then like think about the quality of that conversation. Think about what that person did. Think about the questions that that person asked. Think about their demeanor, like all of those things. And what comes out of that is like all of us hate being talked at, right? Like we want to be listened to. We want to be heard. We want to like co-create something, which is what I hear you saying is like it's also not oftentimes I will come into conversations thinking I have the answer and not having the stance or the mindset to know that like I'm in that conversation to like co-create a solution with someone. No one knows their business better than they do. And I can come in with like all the like business consultant expertise in the world, but if I'm not actually listening to their context and their needs and their interpretation of the situation, then all of my expertise is just clouding the actual situation. It's always like a intersection between like you and your expertise and them and their expertise that sort of leads to this like perfect offer or the perfect engagement or project or, however that turns out.
Um, that's great. Okay, so another question in chat. Um, how to send out the first reach out message? Do you usually add a message when adding a connection on LinkedIn?
Mm. Um, I don't because when I do for a listening tour in particular, like I said, am usually only reaching out to people that I've already worked with. Um, I also find that like LinkedIn in particular can feel so pitchy, where it's like every single DM that you have with someone, you're sort of like waiting to get pitched. Literally anytime anyone pitches me, I like immediately unconnect with them. I'm like, if you're out of the gate leading with a pitch, then like you're not the kind of person that I want to be working with. So I would not recommend doing it as like an initial LinkedIn. Even if it's not a pitch, like even a listening tour ask for like a brand new connection, I would just like make sure you're sort of like building up the relationship first. Not that listening tours are a pitch, but I would just be really careful about that. My initial message, let me see actually if I have the one that I just sent out recently. Um, I think that give me one second and I can tell you like
Yeah,
literally
and it's a good
what
point.
I,
I'll just while you're looking for
yeah.
that, Sarah, because we haven't talked much about this, but like LinkedIn, you all should be linked in with each other and with me if you haven't done that, and with Sarah after today. Every time you meet someone, or not even you don't have to like even physically meet, but you should link them in because that's how you're building your community. And then I always try to send something right away, one sentence. Hey, Sarah, it was so great to meet you today. Thank you again. Because then it reminds me of how I know her, right? Like maybe in a year or 6 months, I come across her again and I'm like, gosh, Sarah, I can't, how did I meet her? But I can
Yeah.
look at my message and I'm like, oh, right. She came into Catalyst. That was last year. So that's something, just make that a habit that you just link everyone in, send a follow up thank you or whatever to remind yourself how you met. And that's your doing yourself a service. And hopefully I bought you some time, Sarah.
Yep, I'm gonna paste it in the chat. So this is literally what I sent out to this was the most recent listening tour I did for my group program. And I just went through my well, the platform I use to manage that part of my business, like my mailing list, and was like pulled a list of anyone who had bought anything from me in the last year and then sent them one-on-one emails. So that's literally what it says. And you can see at the end, I'm very clear. It's not a sales pitch, just a real conversation about your experience running a business.
And what do you think was the percentage of people who responded?
60%. I think I had 60% conversion
Wow.
of the conversation. Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive. But it's also because you already have the relationship with them, right? They already trust you.
Yeah, so these are people who have either been in a paid workshop of mine or like the group that I run. The group that I run is like super small. Like there's this time there was like 15 people in it. So we're all very tight and I like put that message in Slack, our Slack space for them and was like, "Hey, anyone who's up for having a 30-minute conversation with me, like they're already like paying members of mine." So yeah, definitely already had established relationships.
What are some other questions or observations from what we did this week?
I have a question about your background. In the sense that, like, I think you mentioned that it took some time before you landed on an ideal customer profile, and it took some iteration. I'm just kind of curious, like, even like you mentioned that you're a fractional COO and it took like a couple of years to get to that point. I just want to hear a little bit more about your story and like how you got to the ICP and also that title as well.
Sure. So in the beginning, so like I said, I was working for a bunch of educational nonprofits. What I did at those nonprofits is I managed programmatic and research projects. So I had kind of like a weird niche. So uh for me, like when I went out on my own, the first clients I had where I went back to the people I had already worked for as like an employee and were like, hey, you never hired anyone to fill my spot, want to hire me as a contractor? And then they would like refer me to people. This was like before I was like serious about actually running a business. I was just trying to pick up some contract work. They would refer me to people. So really in the beginning, I called myself a project manager. Um, And that niche, and I still actually work for a lot of, I still manage like several research programs that is still like part of my clientele. That has evolved to me serving on like a fractional COO level for a lot of research centers. So I have like several research centers that I'm now like a fractional COO for. But within that role, I still manage like a few of their projects. So that is still like a through line in my business. I don't just work with business owners. So that was like sort of how it started. I called myself a project manager for a long time and like really leaned in on that niche. I would subcontract and work for like a lot of other consultants that I knew. So like I would had a bunch of friends who like became consultants or I got connected with who were already consultants and they would hire me to like manage their projects. Um, Through that happening, I sort of noticed a lot of consultants needing more like a higher level of operation support. Like it wasn't just project management. It was like, oh, like your business is actually a little bit broken on the inside, and I could help you fix that. And actually, my first COO client, I started working with him on like a project management basis. I worked with him as a project manager for 2 years before I pitched him on a COO retainer. And I was like, hey, like you're scaling, we already trust each other. What if we, did this together and made this shift in our engagement? And he was my first COO client. And after that, I sort of like turned it into an offer. So for me, it was like the way it happens for me usually is I sort of realize that's already what I am before I start calling myself that. So I was like, oh, I'm not really a project manager anymore. I'm a fractional COO. And but I had already had that skill set. Like that's what I've been doing the whole time. I just hadn't been calling it that. So a lot of time, and this is also the cool thing about a listening tour is a lot of people have trouble articulating what they do or the problems they solve or like what's unique about them in the way they work with people. The best people to tell you that are the people you've worked with. So get them to express to you like what's different about working with me? How would you describe the thing that I do for you? And that is the way that I got to like sort of my tagline for my COO work is because that is what people told me that I did for them in their business.
Awesome.
That's
And
great.
just a follow up. So
Yeah.
like you got to that transition of being a project manager to now like being a COO on retainer. I
Mhm.
imagine that was financially better for you as well.
Mhm.
Um, and you had that was your first client. How did you say like, okay, this is a great opportunity? Like, what's the next step? Like, how'd you find like the ideal customer profile?
I mean, I think the ideal customer profile is still an ever evolving thing. So,
Okay.
I have for my COO work in particular, um, I have gone, well, I hired a brand strategist at the end of 2024, who really helped me think deeper about the way I was talking about my work. So that was definitely a defining moment for me. He's actually really, I'm going to find his LinkedIn because you guys should follow him. He's really, really great. And he's really good to follow on LinkedIn, about how he, um, promotes himself and talks about his business. So let me just grab his link real quick while I'm saying
Great.
it.
Yeah, because we've got a few brand strategists in the group.
Yeah. So here's his LinkedIn. If you go to his LinkedIn, he has the link to his website too. But he's great. He's also on Instagram. He's much better at social media than I am. So he's a great person to follow on social media. So he was really helpful for me in sort of defining what I did and talking about it in a way that was more coherent. So that is one thing. He also helped me sort of define my ICP. And that happened at the end of 2024. And like I told you, I've run two listening tours since then, one for my COO work, one for my group work. So at the beginning of this, or in spring of this year, I I did repositioning work myself. And then I had another conversation with him where I was like, let's update my brand. my ICP for my COO work is tricky, and I would venture to guess that for all of us, it's a little bit tricky to pin down. I have shifted a lot more from thinking about avatars to archetypes when I think about ideal clients. Then that word for me signals something a little bit more flexible and amorphous than an avatar. Where your ideal client is not going to always be like Susie who drinks oat milk lattes and is like worried about the, quarterly sales report, right? She's 32, she's married, she has three kids, she lives in the suburbs. Like that's how you want to think about an avatar. I find that my ideal client journey has been much more fluid, where it's like I work. So the way I think about my COO ICP is like I work with service-based businesses that are usually true solopreneurs who might have a variety of subcontractors. One of the things that helped me identify what that ICP looks like is I have gotten some contracts since I started this first engagement where I was like, I now know the income threshold that these people need to have to be able to afford my level of expertise. So now I'm like, I work with solo businesses who are making $500,000 gross plus a year. Um, that means that usually they have a variety of subcontractors. Most solopreneurs are not doing it by themselves at 500K. But that is one indication is like I started realizing like when I closed a deal that was easy, I was like, okay, there are some things that are happening here. They are making this much money. They have these, usually my people have subcontractors that they are trying to figure out how to operationalize and use better. My people also have been like true solos for long enough that most of the business lives inside of their own head. So when I use that language with them, it really resonates because that is has sort of been their journey. These are all things that I only know because I've worked with these people and I've had deep conversations with these people. Like it's nothing that you're going to get by like being like asking Claude or Googling or doing anything like that. Like the only way to get that kind of like deep knowledge about your ICP is working with them and having deep conversations with them. But it continues to evolve. So I just closed a contract at the beginning of this month, actually, with an accounting firm who has a team of 10 people, like actual employees, which is a little bit outside my wheelhouse. She fits the profile in a lot of other ways. And for that one, I ended up bringing in a consultant who's going to work with me who will really focus on the employee stuff because, like, HR is not my wheelhouse. So that's an example of like, I have my ICP, and it doesn't mean that, like, when I come across opportunities that feel like a good fit and check all the other boxes, that I'm not like expanding that or like stepping outside of that a little bit too.
Great questions, Rishi. And Sarah, you said so, like, so the archetype, how is the archetype different than the ICP and the I mean, the avatar is really like demographic, right? And the archetype is
Yeah.
more psychographic,
Yeah,
or I guess, yeah.
yeah. I think psychographic is a good way of describing it. For me, I think of like for me it gives me a little bit more flexibility in my mind when I'm thinking about the people that I'm talking to and being able to identify if I can help them. It's a lot more about like symptoms, the things they're saying to me, where I can sort of identify like, oh, I know what you're dealing with. I've seen this happen before. I can, like I can sort of like diagnose it as opposed to being as so I guess it's more like I'm leaning into what we were talking about before about having those kind of like genuine conversations with people and being able to come in. If you come in where you're like, this is my ICP and like I know exactly their problems and I know exactly what they look like, then you have these blinders on and you're not going to be able to like see other opportunities around you. The flip side of that, which I think is the problem most people have, is like they have no idea who their ICP is, and so they're just like, I will talk to anyone, I will do anything for anyone. Which we all go through that phase. There's nothing wrong with that phase at all. Nothing wrong with it. But it's like a balance, I think, between those two, where it's like you don't want to be like, I only work with, like whatever I said, Susie from the suburbs who's 32 and is worried about the sales reports. That is going to put you in this really narrow frame of mind where then you're not open to like the other possibilities and relationships that might be helpful to explore.
Great. What other questions or thoughts? We were
I have
starting
another.
to talk. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go,
No,
Rishi.
I was just going to say something, unless anyone else wants to jump in. But you mentioned one thing about like getting customers, kind of like you use old school methods, I think you said. Um, And when I think of old school methods, I think of like, getting on the phone with people, like cold calling. Um, I think the other thing is like going to events and like conferences and things like that. I'm curious if you have any insight on like conferences specifically, because uh, I know that they're impactful, but they're also like, $2,000, $4,000. So sometimes I'm
Mhm.
like, maybe I shouldn't do that.
I mean, I think so first of all, I guess I would call myself an ambivert. I'm not necessarily an introvert, but the thought of like going to a conference or a networking event makes my skin crawl. That is not my jam. Like I can't, I avoid those things like the plague. Um, but that's like just a personal thing where I just like can't be in a room full of strangers having conversations. So that is not like my own personal method. What I would say about the conferences is that where your ideal client is? And are you actually going to be able to have deep conversations with them in that environment? Maybe. I like a friend of mine has a story of like she landed like a six-figure contract because she was like at a conference and was like in the food line next to someone and had a random conversation and it like, led to it. But and it's not that networking like that doesn't work because I think it does if you're like clear on what you do, who you serve, what their problems are, all those kinds of things. And I think you can get a lot out of conferences or like bigger networking type of experiences. When I say old school, what I mean by that is really just like the one-on-one relationship. So like the way I found my accounting client is she is my accountant. And after I finished my listening tour, my COO listening tour, I redid my landing page and I was thinking of like who is in my network who works with business owners. And I was like, Vanessa works with business owners. She's my accountant. She clearly works with lots of business owners. And so I emailed her and I was like, hey, I don't know if you really even know what I do because you're just my accountant, but this is what I do. Here's my landing page, just so you have a little bit more context. If you ever know anyone who like might need something like this. And she was like, A, I will go through my like 1,700 person client list and think of if I can introduce you to anyone. B, I think I need your help right now. And so like that is a good example of like both that sort of nodal thing that I was talking about, like who do your people go to for advice? And and a warm introduction is always going to go light years farther than a cold call or a LinkedIn message or anything else. Like if someone I know and trust introduces me to someone and is like, you should have a get to know you chat with this person, I will always do it. Always. If someone reaches out to me randomly, most of the time I'm gonna be like, yeah, I don't really have time for that. So I'm always thinking about my network as like a rhizomatic thing where it's like that 3 degrees of separation thing. Like I literally have people on my in my CRM where the tag is need to meet. And then I've like gone back through my list and I'm like, who knows them? Who knows someone that knows them? And trying to figure out like who could make those connections for me. So hopefully that's helpful, but definitely not cold calling. I don't know if I could ever do that. If I can't go to a conference, then I probably definitely can't cold call anyone.
That's a relief. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like conferences haven't come back as much since the pandemic either. I don't know where.
I mean, one idea for a conference though, depending on the type of conference that it is um as like Maria, I one of the ways I find people for my group program and sometimes my COO work too is I do a lot of workshops for different communities. So I run workshops for Freelancers Union. I run workshops for Creative Mornings. I run workshops for agencies, for collectives that help free like I will run a free workshop for any community that serves freelancers. And like similarly, I'm doing like a networking event, which God help me, I'm gonna try and get out of my ambivert shell next Tuesday. But I'm doing like an in-person networking event at a co-working place next week where I'm like speaking and then facilitating the networking. So for the conference thing, it might, what I think could be interesting is if there's an opportunity for you to present at a conference where your ideal client is and use that presentation or that workshop or whatever it is to make them problem aware. Like that is always the key about those workshops is like you want to provide value. You don't want it to be just an obvious pitch fest of like, hey, hire me to do this thing. But you want to get them to the place where they are so aware of the problem and your ability to solve it that the only thing they can do is hire you. And workshops actually work really good for that. So that might be another way of thinking about conferences a little bit differently as opposed to just networking.
Mm. That brings me to a question that I'm curious to get your thoughts on, Sarah, is like doing work for free.
Mm.
And, this is like content marketing you're talking about where you do these workshops. It's how I found you. I mean, it makes so much sense because it's like, your bullseye of your audience, your ICP. But what are your thoughts on free work when you're starting to build your practice?
I think there are different ways of being compensated for things that are not just monetary. So I do not believe in doing work for free, but I do believe in doing work if you're being compensated differently. So for me, growing my mailing list, growing my visibility, getting people to know who I am is compensation. And so if I'm doing like I would not do a free workshop for like a group of 5 people who are not my ICP. Will I do a group workshop for 100 people who are definitely my ICP every day, all day, every day? I literally just had a conversation right before this one with someone who runs an agency, and she has like works with a bunch of freelancers, and subcontractors, and she's bringing me in to do a workshop. She was like, "How much does it cost?" And I was like, "This is a lead gen for me. Like, if I host a landing page, they sign up for my mailing list, like it's not going to cost you anything." Um, I would be very careful of doing work. I guess, sorry. The other version of that is if you're getting compensated in ways like my mailing list example is one. Another way is like getting experience doing something that you're not that great at yet. So that might be another version of like, I know a bunch of people, they don't do it for free, but some of the folks that I coach have some contractors that work with them that make a relatively low hourly rate because they're pretty new at this. And really, it is like a sort of a paid mentorship opportunity where it's like, I'm going to pay you a lower hourly rate than I normally would, but really it's like you are learning alongside me as I do this. So that's like another version of that. Um, if so, I would just ask yourself, if you're in that situation of like, are you being compensated in some other way? Like, what is the ROI of doing this? Um, the other thing I would be very careful about is I know a lot of people who work for equity, and that is something that over and over again I have seen burn people. So I would always be, not that it always burns people, but I would be very careful about equity as well.
Yeah. Um, yeah, this is great because it's tricky. I've noticed too, just in the role that I'm in, people don't mean to take advantage. No one's actively trying to take advantage of other people. But when you're starting out, maybe you don't have clear boundaries yet. You're hungry, you want clients that it can be a recipe for being kind of taken advantage of unless you are very clear about what you're getting out of it. And there are, yeah, as you said, multiple ways to get compensated.
Yeah.
How did the relationship, how did they find each other, your clients and the kind of like paid apprenticeship um, people?
Is really just like their network.
Okay.
Yeah. So this particular person is in my group program. Um, and it was like, someone else who knew her from one of the clients she worked for or something was like, I'm going to leave my job. I want to go out and become a consultant. Could I pick up some work with you and like learn alongside you? Um, yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right, we've got time for one more question, one or two more questions. You can be beyond, it can be any kind of business related questions. As you can see, Sarah will be able to answer it.
I do have a question. Thank you, Sarah, for your time. I do notice you have really put it together. You know where your positioning is. You know what you're doing. How long did that take you? How many years for you to finally feel like I know what I'm doing? I feel like an adult now.
Um, I will say that like there are moments where I still sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? So it looked like, so it is the imposter syndrome never goes away. I will just like say that it would never goes away. You do get to junctures, you get to like plateaus where you're like, oh, I feel like I figured that out. Oh, that feels very clear now. But then you look back on it 3 years later and you're like, that was awful. What the hell was I thinking? So just so you know, it is a constant journey. You never arrive. You never arrive. And so like to that end, I think there was like versions of that, like stair steps for me where I was like, oh, I think I figured this out. Oh, I think I figured this out. Um, I guess the first version of that is like it took me probably like within the first 3 years, maybe I was like, okay, I feel like I'm a project manager. I feel like I know what I'm doing. I feel like I know who I serve. Um, and then it was probably like another five, let's see, three, five, another 4 years after that, where I sort of transitioned into the COO like positioning. I will say though that every time that that happens, it is always in hindsight. So it is never like, oh, I've decided now that I'm going to become a COO, and so I am like setting out to do it. It's very much like I said before, where I was like, oh, this is what I've been doing. And I've like, because I had this experience, I now understand that that's what I am. It wasn't like I decided what I was and then became it. It was like I sort of already became it. And then I was like, oh, this is what I am. So I think that just speaks to like getting as many like projects and clients under your belt as you can. Like in the beginning, and I'm not saying don't be choosy and don't have boundaries and don't like know who you're talking to, know the problems you solve, all those kinds of things. But that kind of confidence only comes after the experience. It never comes before it.
Can you speak to, because I think, when you're starting out, everything is new. And so I think sometimes the student mindset is like, oh, I'm gonna wait until I am competent. I'm gonna wait until I know how to do it before I do it.
Mhm.
So how do you talk yourself into what is the mindset, or how do you kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone and do something before you're really kind of ready to do it?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I don't know how, like, I don't know if I can explain how I do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sort of like a intrinsically motivated doer type of person. And so for me it is more of like a pull where it's like something seems very exciting and that or like challenging or like fulfilling, and that is the thing that like, so it's less of a push of like I need to push myself to do this. It's more of like the pull of that thing is just so strong that I can't not do it. And
Mm.
so I just like stumble through it, and then like I said, you sort of like get to the other side and you look back and you're like, oh, look at all those things that I learned. Um, like when I started the coaching side of my business, I was like, I just sort of was decided that that's what I was going to do, and started telling people that that's what I was doing, and eventually started picking up some clients. And like my first few coaching clients, like, not that I didn't help them, but like looking back on it now, I'm like, oh, if I could coach those people now that I coached back then, how much different it would be. So I don't know if that totally answers your question. For me, it is very much about like being very clear about what I want and like following the path of what I want and having that pull me as opposed to like pushing myself to do something.
Yeah, it does. I feel like you're focusing on the excitement of the new and the challenge versus the fear of failure,
Yeah,
or and what is
definitely.
that? What is failure? Because really it's learning, right? Like when things don't go your way, that's like such good learnings.
And I guess the other thing I would say along those lines is like keep like never lose like this with like your peers because that is also the thing that keeps me going. And it was always the place where I like didn't know what I was doing. I would like hit up one of the consultants that was like farther along than I was, and I was like, how does this work? Like, what is this thing that's happening? I will also say that I have been incredibly lucky to have just like the most amazing clients. I have had clients several times in my career who have pushed me to raise my prices or pushed me to like take on things that like maybe I didn't know that I was ready for yet. So whether it is a client or a peer or a coach or a teacher or whatever it is, like that network is so, so important for that too. Because you can't see like what do they say? You can't see the outside of the bottle from the inside of the bottle. But if you have like a peer group or a support system outside, a support system of people who also work independently. Not that your other support system isn't important too, but it's so important to have a network of other freelancers to be able to talk to about this kind of stuff.
Mm, that's great. Um, all right. Any last chance to ask a question?
Question.
Yeah.
Great.
Um, Thank you, Sarah, for talking with us. You mentioned earlier that like a lot of your work is around helping solopreneurs with their systems. And we kind of did that like in the first couple modules. And I was kind of curious, like what common issues do you see like with the systems buildings that like maybe block solopreneurs or like that would be helpful to get them like started in developing better systems?
Hmm. That's a great
Great
question.
question.
So my approach to systems and is always do what you will or build what you will actually use. So usually I have people start with like, what does it actually look like when you wake up in the morning and decide, like, how do you know what you're going to do that day? Do you open your inbox? Do you open your Trello? Do you open whatever it is? So it's like, pay attention to your natural rhythms of doing things. I often work with a lot of people who like manage their whole business in Google spreadsheets. And they're like, I feel like I need a more sophisticated project management system. And I'm like, are you going to use a sophisticated project management system? I can't tell you how many sophisticated project management systems I've built for people. And then we always go back to the Google spreadsheet. So I would just like pay attention to like sort of your natural tendencies of like how you think about organizing things. And then use the systems that lend itself to that. Um, Instead of feeling like you have to push yourself into a system because it is like, the system that is going to solve all your problems or things like that. I also find that uh, AI can be a great thought partner on systems. I use Claude a lot when I'm building systems for other people, to really like help me think through like I will literally have someone walk me through like what does it look like how you organize your day? How do you spend your time? Where do things fall through the cracks? Where do you start feeling anxiety when you're looking at your to-do list? All those kinds of things, and then be able to like have a back and forth conversation about what are the tools that might be able to help me do this. Um, Claude is also, well, AI in general is also really good at helping you identify places where you might be able to automate and systematize things. If you can like walk through one of your workflows, I do this a lot when I'm automating things for other people, where it's like, here's the workflow. Show me the places where this isn't efficient or where it could be automated. And then like, what are the tools that I should be using to do that? But the other big thing I would say is, um, you can build the best system in the world, and if you do not have a ritual for using it, it will never work. So in addition to the actual like systems and tools that you use, I always have people focus on what I call time rituals, which are like what are the like daily, weekly, monthly things that trigger you to use the system. So like if you have a project management system, like I manage a lot of my projects in Notion. I literally have a reminder on my calendar um every Monday that's like look at your Notion tasks because if not, I will never look at them and they will just live there. Um and I use like a couple of different systems in between that. So I always make sure that I have one core system. I use this task manager called Sunsama. I'll type it in the chat. And that's the system that I use to manage my rituals and all my other systems. So like I have a daily sun sama. I have a daily ritual, I have a weekly ritual, I have a monthly ritual at the end of the month that's like bill your pay your subcontractors, like those kinds of things. So I would just focus on focus advice.
Thank you. That was so helpful.
Yeah, great question. We gave Notion a try, and I think as a group, we decided to not engage with it further. I think there's a
Yeah,
few
hard.
people that are sticking with it, but I love your addition with the ritual, the time ritual as well.
Yeah, it's super important. I can't tell you how many, like I said, project management systems I build for people that they never use. And that's because they don't have those. Like if your morning ritual is to just open up your email inbox, that is the thing that is going to drive what you do that day. And so it's like really important to just be cognizant of how you're thinking about setting up your time.
I love that. And that means that you're in a reactive mode. And we've talked about mindset. That was the first thing we talked about, proactive versus reactive. And so, yeah, interesting, like kind of how that, what mindset that puts you in, your systems,
Yep.
from the beginning. Sarah, this was so great and so helpful. Thank you so much for your time. And do you have any workshops coming up? Can you share any links or anything? They
Uh,
have your contact, because they have the listening tour,
yeah.
so they have your info. Highly recommend that you all link Sarah in
Mhm.
and check out her site. But yeah, if there's any, I've loved your workshops. So I'm always kind of on the lookout for them.
Yeah, so I will, but it's not, I will have I have two in August. Are they both, no, what is it? I have one in August. I don't have links for them yet.
That's okay.
But I have one in August that will be about strategic planning that I'm doing for I don't know if they call themselves an agency. It's a group called Uncompany, which might be another, if you guys look them up, they are awesome. I think they also work mostly with marketing professionals.
Mhm.
And so I'll be doing a workshop for them on strategic planning in August. I'll be doing one for the Freelancers Union in August. I'm just gonna drop if you're interested in getting on my mailing list, I just dropped the link to my blog in the chat and you can sign up for my blog and then you'll get my newsletter, which will tell you when I actually have links to these things. I also post them on LinkedIn, but I never know what people can actually see on LinkedIn. So I can't promise you'll actually see it there. I'll be running one for the Freelancers Union in August on seasonal business planning. So how to plan your business with your natural seasons. And then I'll be running another one for Freelancers Union in September on client conversations.
Great.
But I do not have links to any of those yet.
Okay, that's great. Well,
Oh,
and
but the other one I do have a link to. This is a free event series that I do. This also isn't until September. But I run this free event series that I bring in guests to have collaborative conversations about topics. We do them once a month, but I'm taking July and August off. So this next one is in September. It's about aligning your business with your life. So that's one event that I do have a link for.
great. Thank you so much for joining us. And Really appreciate it. And if you all can stick around for a few minutes, I've got a couple announcements. But yeah, thanks again, Sarah.
Thanks,
Really,
everyone. This
really
was super
appreciate
fun.
your time.
Yep. Good luck. And connect with me on LinkedIn. Hit me up if you guys have questions.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
See you. Okay, so a couple announcements. Oh my gosh, isn't she amazing? I like discovered I was like, okay, I am going to all of her things. Um, okay, so yeah, I got tons out of that. A couple announcements to make. I'm gonna cut the recording. Um, okay, so a few things. Okay, I'm really excited to announce we have Lauren Cantor. Some of you may know because she is faculty here at Art Center, and what a badass. I put her LinkedIn in the chat. So she teaches a ton of different things here. But she's going to focus on, she's got a business background. I think she also was an astrophysicist. I mean, it's like she was also on Wall Street. I mean, she's kind of this polymath, amazing person. And she's going to come in, I believe it's on the 29th, um, and do a presentation on how to use AI to automate some operational things. So it's different than Zoe's talk, which was about creative workflow and creative tools. This is really like like what Sarah was talking about, of just how to automate some of this stuff so that you can focus on like the fun, aspect of freelance or like the actual work of it. Um, so that is really exciting. We're going to have the same module, but she's just going to come in. So it's going to be not real her talk about AI is going to be unrelated to the module. Just so you're aware of that. And she can only come in on Friday. I'll put this all in Slack, but I just wanted to verbally tell you so you don't need to take notes because I'll send this in writing. She's going to come in on Friday, the 29th. So I would encourage everyone to come to that session. We will also record it. So if you can't come to the Friday session, no problem. I'll share the recording afterwards. The other thing is, oh, well, actually, I wanted to ask you, I wanted to poll. Um, do we want to, so I have, we all get one free miss. So I actually am not able to attend July 10th. It's a Friday. So do we want to do everyone shows up that Thursday and we do a big group, or should I reschedule it for the first? So we do Wednesday, Thursday instead of Thursday, Friday. Can you all put in chat what you prefer?
Can you say the
Oh,
dates one more time?
yeah, let me say, okay, so it is, sorry, Lauren Cantor, I totally gave wrong dates. Lauren Cantor is coming Friday, July 31st. Um, and she's going to talk about automating business tasks. And so I would encourage everyone to come to that if you can, and it will be recorded if you can't make that Friday. Um, and then the week of July 6th, okay, sorry, then I've got three things. So the next thing is I am out on July 10th. I'm going to miss July 10th. So we've got two options. One, we can all meet as one big group on Thursday, July 2nd, or we can do Wednesday and Thursday. So the Friday group can meet on Wednesday. What is your preference? Feel free to put in the chat group. Okay.
So we were gonna meet on, I have down on July 1st, but is that no longer a,
Let me take a look. Give me one second. July 1st. Yes, so we could meet, sorry,
That's July 4th. So we are meeting that weekend. We're meeting Wednesday, Thursday, first or second. The next week, July 10th, I'm out. So we could meet as one big group, or we could on July 9th, or we could meet July 8th and July 9th. So basically, do we want one group or two groups? And I realize okay, most people want the big group. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put this in Slack and we'll do one large group. And if you can't make it, I will, because I'm the one that's screwing up the schedule that week, I will record it and share with anyone that can't make it. Um, okay, and then the last thing, okay, week of July 29th. Okay. All right, I think I got it. So we're going to do large group for the week of July 29th as well, Elizabeth. So what you were asking about, let's just meet on that Thursday. Okay. I will put this in chat. Or in the Slack. I realize that this is confusing because there's like lots of different dates and things. But it's great. I just wanted to get a sense for if you wanted to do one large group or two big groups. Um, Anything else that people want to bring up before we say goodbye? Okay. I know this week was a lot of work. I'm going to continue. I'm off tomorrow if you joined late. Tomorrow is a holiday, so I will review some of the responses as they're coming in, and then I'll continue on Monday. So just so you know. Great. All right. Well, good to see you all. And I hope you got a lot out of today, and I'll post the recording. And I love all of the work that you're doing. I'm really enjoying taking it in and learning from you. And yeah, I'm really just think the world of all of you. You're like doing the hard work. It's really cool to watch. All right. Okay. Well, aw. All right. Well, have a great weekend and Juneteenth, and I'll see you next week, and I'll see you in Slack.
All right, take care.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you, Maria. Bye.